Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 559th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today we've got Nate Nasralla. He's the founder of Fluint.io, and we're talking about how to close more deals when you're not even in the room. So I did a demo of his software over on the CRM Sushi podcast, so that's being published right now. So it should be available for you to review as you're listening to this or after you listen to this. But Nate's got a cool story, how he got started, when he got started, his background, how he came to develop this, how he priced it, blah, blah, blah. So just like you've always heard me get into the specifics with founders of companies. So, this is some cool software and a cool story and a cool guy. As always, if you need some help growing your sales, check out makeeverysale.com. I've lowered the price on that. No promo code is needed. It's the video series and workbook with scripts and templates on how to control every sales opportunity you run across. And then you get all of that program, all of the videos and workbook and more on-demand content when you join the Sell More of Everything course. So every Monday morning, I lead a live call. You can ask questions. They're recorded. There's a private group. You can ask questions. You can join super affordably month to month or even extra super mega affordably at half off for the entire year. So invest in yourself, all right? What else are you going to do? Crypto's down, S&P's down, everything's down. So invest in yourself. It's mo better anyway, all right? Sellmoreofeverything.com. After you enroll in that, so pause this, go enroll, then come back and listen to this episode with Nate. By the way, something got corrupted in the beginning, just where I say his name and greet him. So we just jump right into welcome. So it happens. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
I'm doing great, Wes. Thanks so much for having me.
So founder, huh? When I never know, like when am I a founder or a CEO or president, chairman of the board? How do we pick these titles, man? How'd you choose on founder?
It's a good question. I feel like CEO is something that you have to grow into over time. A lot of my day is spent on product design, getting deep into kind of the technical side of the product.
Right.
When I think of a day in the life of the Fluint CEO is going to be a lot more thinking about budgeting and capital and all kinds of other things that kind of come in as the business grows. So right now, I would say I'm founder, becoming CEO over time.
All right. Hey, it's a damn good answer, man. You're on the right track. I won't have to use that saber on you. So I appreciate you, man.
Well, keep me in line.
All right. So yeah, we connected online and I was checking out your site, Fluint, and I love the concept. So we're going to have you on the CRM Sushi podcast here pretty soon. But stop losing deals when you're not in the room. I'm like, oh man, amen. I remember the first time I learned this concept, right? It's like 99% of the sale happens when we're not with the prospect, right? I mean, we're not moving in with them, and so I don't care if you have daily calls, daily meetings, there's still a whole lot of stuff going on, especially on a complex, we're talking B2B, complex sales, 2, 5, 10, 15 decision makers, months to ponder this. I mean, but still, even on a quicker sale, we're not there very much. So how did this come about? Because I want to kind of jump back and forth between the tool, because I think it's important, and how the heck you got started, because I love the kind of origin story.
Yeah, well, I would say the product was really an outgrowth of like recognizing that there was this one thing that was killing deals that I was working on personally, the teams I was building was working on. And it was the fact that all of the make or break moments in the deal were happening when we weren't in the room, and therefore we couldn't control the message. And so it was always when the champion who was in the sales meeting with us, they would go back to their team in an internal meeting, and then they would pitch the product in their own words. They would handle the objections, handle all of the questions. Meanwhile, we had no idea what was going on. There's a lot broken with process and technology that lead me to say, one, I got to try to do something about this just on our own for our team in a very manual way. And then two, kind of over time that led into the founding story. But it's just this idea that the moments that create and kill deals happen in internal meetings, not sales meetings.
Mm-hmm. And were you always with bigger companies? I'm looking at your background here. Like, was it always technology or software as a service? Like, what's your background?
Mm-hmm. So I actually kind of took a detour into financial modeling, where I built big old spreadsheets to value tech before getting into sales. Now, I'm a former founder, so I previously co-founded a company. And what was very interesting is that company was in the nonprofit tech space. So we would build fundraising marketing software for nonprofits. And a lot of people kind of hear nonprofit and they think no profit, but over $400 billion with a B are given to nonprofits every year. So a lot of organizations are trying to raise a lot of money and they need software to help them. And what was very interesting about getting into sales by way of the nonprofit space is that most times, even the executive director or the CEO of that nonprofit can't make a large purchase. They have to bring it to the board. It's how kind of governance structures run. So selling to nonprofits, you're always teaching somebody to sell with you because you're never in the room when that board meeting is happening to try to pitch, hey, this is why you need to allocate this budget for this spend. And so that was one way to, even before deal sizes started to kind of grow much larger, just thinking about this reality and even kind of a smaller deal by way of kind of deal value. Now, after that company was bought, I built and developed the first enterprise sales team to start doing 6 and 7 figure deals for the company that acquired us. And that's where I really went into the world of complex sales and talking about complexity defined as the number of like contacts in a deal. To your point, we're talking 10, 12, 15 people, all with different opinions, all combining into one sale. And that's where more of the true complexity in an enterprise level sale starts to develop.
Mm-hmm. So you're modeling humans? I mean, like, I'm still wrapping my brain around how the heck you're doing this, because I mean, everybody's so different, right? You got the analytical, you got the go-getters, you got factions going on. Hell, I'm in the middle. I'm the president of our HOA now.
Okay, that's a big job.
Oh my gosh. and the political juggling. I mean, I'm in this job less than 2 months, and I mean, people are coming to me and I'm like, oh goodness gracious. There's 5 board members, right? We've got subcommittees. I was talking to the owner of the property management company that we use. I've got a rogue, hard charging individual on the board. Oh my gosh. I would love to see how you would manage the 5 of us.
And that's why, I think enterprise sales is a lot of fun, because you realize like, it's not ultimately about how you're pitching features and explaining a product. Mm-mm. Everybody's got a different set of things that they care about. Like one, in the context of the HOA, one person's like, well, this fence, they got to split the cost of repairing the fence. The other one's like, I'm trying to paint my house, and my neighbor, meanwhile, is painting it pink, and I don't want that happening. So everybody's got their own set of priorities, problems that they're trying to push an agenda for.
Exactly.
And when you can finally agree on what the problem is that needs to be addressed, everybody's got an opinion on the right way to go about it. And so then you got to deconflict that, create some consensus. And so that is the art of the enterprise sale, is trying to create some like consensus and glue and get everybody on the same page to move forward with something.
Right. So how are you doing that? How is your software? How is that helping me do that? I mean, are there like little personality indices on each person, and then giving me a weighted average, like love on this person more, just give this guy the facts and get out of his hair?
So when I think about the practice that's very effective in driving a deal forward amidst all of the different contacts and complexity. So I'll talk about the practice and then how the product actually develops this or aids this. So without a champion, a deal is dead. And the champion is the person with the influence to begin to align and coordinate all of the different contacts in the deal. They have some type of incentive to say like, yeah, I'm going to go to bat for this. There's something in it for me. And if you haven't created a champion for that deal, it's going to be very difficult to create some momentum and move the deal forward. Now, most times the champion is going to go into an internal meeting and do one of 2 things in order to deliver a message to try to get everybody on the same page about the problem, what to do about it. One, they just kind of wing the message. They're like, I'll just kind of go and deliver and say what I hope people resonate with. Second, this is fascinating. This was part of the buyer research that we did to develop the product, was to ask them how they run that internal sales process. Because ultimately, that's what's happening when the sales rep is in the room. The champion is selling for them. And they would talk about this idea of the treasure hunt, where after a sales call, they would get all of these different materials, decks, demo recordings, downloads, and they would pick out the different snippets that were familiar to them, resonated, 2 sentences here, a sentence there, and they would combine it all inside of their own internal material, some type of internal brief format that their team was used to looking at. And so they were essentially creating their own sales content or their own sales material and putting it in their own words because they thought that the team would resonate with the way that they had framed that message. And again, if you look at both of those scenarios, there's zero control, no opportunity for the sales rep to shape that message. So coming back now to the product, what Fluint does is it enables a champion to go to their team with a message that the sales rep helps to develop. So what the product is doing is during a call, during a conversation, where you're talking with the buyer, they're explaining their problems, again, using their own language, how they think about these issues. Fluent's converting that conversation into notes and content in their own words that the sales rep, kind of like Mad-libs. Did you ever play Mad-libs as a kid?
A little bit.
Yeah. So you can drag and drop their own words about the problem into a workspace, grab designs of your product to align the solution, and then add them into that workspace to develop it together, to collaborate, to have the other buyers jump in, share questions, comments. So it's one shared space around the message that the sales rep is helping to develop for that internal sales process the champion is helping them lead.
All right. That's cool. And I got to imagine, I mean, you have that internal champion. They do want to play along, right? I mean, the idea is they like the salesperson. There is something in it for them to get this deal done. So they are coachable, right? And willing to play along.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's the whole point of figuring out if this person truly is a champion. Like, is there incentive? Is there something in it for them? And that's why we kind of call it Fluint in both ways. Is one is the buyer coachable in the sense that they are up for the sales rep's guidance and coaching on how to articulate and communicate the product's value. And then on the flip side, when you look at what the highest performing sales reps are doing, they're taking everything that they hear from a call and they're building out follow-up materials accordingly. Instead of just sending a template, they're trying to use and weave the buyer's language into their follow-up materials. However, it's wildly manual and time consuming. And so it's the blending of the two. Can you give your champion a way to communicate your value while also incorporating their language, how they talk to their team, into your sales content?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm seeing your, your logos on your site. It's like, I'm a HubSpot partner. I've had Gong on the show. I've had Chorus on the show. I've had Seismic on the show. So, man, where you been all my life?
Well, that's the thing is like, so what we used HighSpot and we used Gong, and there was this gap between the systems where the buyer would be sharing so much good stuff in a conversation and it would all be recorded, and we would use Gong to coach our reps. We would have HighSpot to share follow-up content that our marketing team had developed. But bringing those two together is such a huge pain because it's up to the rep to play back the recording. Oftentimes they would be going in, downloading the native PowerPoint file, editing, updating, attaching to an email. And so it's bringing them both together because at the end of the day, the champion also wants and needs coaching on the message and content to help communicate it.
Very cool. So is this assuming like that does the sales rep need like strong sales enablement, like all these tools, or can they just be a good, competent sales rep and run this software and, give that champion the tools they need to help make that sale?
Yeah. I mean, the highest performing reps are already doing this just on their own.
Right.
Like earlier today, I was talking with one account executive who discovered that his buyer uses Notion to talk with their team, to plan new projects. So he opened up a free Notion account, built out the message after the meeting in Notion because it was familiar and fit with the buyer's process. And so though it's very manual and very kind of one-off and bespoke, It's what a lot of reps are already doing. They're trying to take what they hear from their buyer in a conversation, build out content that fits just for them to guide the message.
Yeah. Yep. It's crazy how much work good salespeople do inside of a company that like most don't know. Like most management. I remember I got yelled at 2008. Got yelled at by the marketing department because I was creating my own white papers. Right. I'm like, you're a salesman. We do that. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, our stuff sucks. Right? I'm creating stuff that people want to read and I'm putting it in language that they can understand. You know, not this, because it was super technical, right? And it was too technical for some technical people. I'm like, I'm going to streamline this thing. You know, great salespeople are wearing a lot of hats.
Oh yeah. I mean, from a leadership perspective, like that's the best thing in the world to see. What are your top reps doing different than everybody else? And how can you then design a process that gives that same approach to everybody else? Because, you know, not everybody can write their own white paper. Those that do, they certainly have a leg up. And to be honest, that was, you know, when selling was most fun for me is when I was thinking about some type of creative idea outside the bounds of our, you know, plug and play process. Like I'll give you an example of this. I recently wrote a post for Sales Hacker on creative follow-up ideas. How do you re-engage a deal that's stalled? They've ghosted you. How do you get them back into conversation? And what one idea that I would use pretty regularly is I would write a future press release all about what's going on in their business that they want to talk about as a result of something that we helped enable through our partnership. So it's written with a date in the future, big headline that somebody like their CEO would want to announce, and I would buy a domain related to that, and I would post it there. And then I would send it to them and be like, hey, got this awesome idea and vision that I want to talk to you about. But, you know, we haven't been able to catch up lately. You have a minute for me to walk you through this. And there's, you know, fun stuff like that is outside of the regular operating rhythms that the, you know, most effective, high performing reps are putting some time and creativity into.
Yeah. Interesting. So how are you seeing this working in this COVID world, right? Because you didn't start this till COVID was well on its way, 2021. Right. So did COVID help accelerate your growth?
So it did. And what was interesting is it really changed the way that a lot of buyers work across their team. Before, it used to be more of a like developer oriented product where there was a lot of asynchronous selling happening. And now a lot of teams are working across different systems, collaborating on different projects without having to schedule a meeting for everything. And so what happens is in the sales process, buyers are talking about a certain deal across Slack, across different types of communication outside of just joining in meetings. And one, that's all hidden from the sales rep. They have no visibility into it. And two, for the buyer, it's also complex. It's a lot of ad hoc to different moving parts to manage, especially for the champion, the one who's at the center of the glue trying to bring that deal together. And so it changed a lot of behavior that gave us an opportunity to build around and to get feedback, not only from sellers, but from buyers as well, and in the product design.
Yeah, it's so chaotic. It's like, you know, herding cats. So are you simply coaching behind the scenes, or does it give almost like a Notion or a Slack in and of itself to where that champion can store some notes, documents, things like that to help sell internally?
So it gives a space for the champion to bring all of the other buyers on their team in order to share feedback questions around a message that they helped craft with the sales rep. So an example of how this worked in testing. So before we even started developing a product, I'm a big fan of manually trying to prove out some things. So the very first version of this was Google Docs, where we would build the message with our champion in a Google Doc to see if, one, they would actually share that with their team, that we could get that message directly to them in that form. And then two, if their team would interact with it. And so on one particular deal that was working, it was with a large social media platform, that our deal champion shared with the team, and somebody was asking questions about privacy, data security. And it wasn't a topic that we had covered before, but I was able to see that question and who was asking the question inside of the Google Doc, so that I knew what to share and how to follow up with a champion in that deal to say, hey, we didn't cover this, but I think this is the need to know stuff that you'll want to share. Do you want me to go ahead and post that in the workspace? How do you want me to communicate that? And so we were able to work together because we were literally on the same page, the same Google Doc, and I had some visibility into what was going on and what the rest of the buying team was thinking.
Does the buying team feel manipulated or spied on? I guess they can always go to a different channel to have some other communication. So
yeah, totally. They can choose to put communications in a different channel, but more than anything, what they shared is that I love the transparency. Like we're not trying to do this whole cloak and dagger thing. We're just all on the same page, like trying to get it right and make the right decision together. So it's more of this, okay, you're not across the table from me selling to us. Now we're all sitting on the same table, trying to figure out the right way to break down this problem. So it's more, we're all in it together, same side of the table, as opposed to opposite.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. So are you finding that these prospects, are they more open, in this regard? It's everything's a catch-22. Sometimes if you're in person, you can break down barriers quicker. Others, maybe they play the cards closer to the vest. So I don't know that there's an ideal selling environment, right? I think we just have to make the best of what we've been given, but are you finding are walls coming down quicker with this? Is there better communication, or is it easier for people to hide and not participate?
Yeah, no, I love that question. One, what I'll say is that no tool, no software is ever going to replace just good rapport building, good sales practices. So with that said, we are finding that communication flows more free and open for a couple of different reasons. One, buyers actually see that you heard them. They're like, oh, got it. Like you understood and can play back and reflect exactly what I was sharing with you. That's awesome to see. Number one. Number two, and this was very interesting in the testing with Google Docs, is that when a buyer's feedback is shown and played back in written form as opposed to in conversation, there's something about it that feels more permanent, and they are more willing to either correct something that maybe was mischaracterized or to provide extra context if it was incomplete. And so they're going deeper and opening up, which just allows for a richer conversation, more empathy to develop. And so this whole idea of the written word or building the message together, it just changes the posture in the sales process, and people become a little bit more open and willing to work together.
Yeah, because if something is worthy of being considered, then there's a need, right? And if there's a need, then one way or another, a decision is going to be made. So it's kind of like documenting their input, right? Like speak now or forever hold your peace, right?
That's right. And that's a key piece to what's different. Excuse me.
Got the old cough button. Good.
Yeah, I got the old cough button there. So that it's, to your point, it's a key piece of what's different is that when you look at the message or the content that's being developed, is we are taking the buyer's words from a conversation and putting it into content. And what are buyers talking about? They're talking about their problem, why it matters, what it's costing them, how much that sucks. And so if you look at how the message is being developed, it's very intentional to focus on the buyer's problems, not just product. It's not another way to just put a bunch of product visuals and marketing lingo in there. The whole basis of the content is the buyer's problem. And that's very different from how a lot of sales teams operate. A lot of their content is all product oriented. And so it's the same stuff that's delivered to every single account, regardless of what makes them unique.
So are you seeing sales cycles being shortened? Are you seeing bigger deals closing because of this?
So that's part of what we're testing for with our beta users in the product. It is something that we tested for in the Google Doc version. and we did see a reduction in the sales cycle by about 30%, which was fun because that's the number one gripe about the enterprise deal is it's long and it's slow moving. And it comes down to being able to more effectively communicate a message that grabs attention, that gets everybody on the same page. So now that's honestly the goal for this year is to prove that out with the product in place of teams using. And, again, it's the thing about the enterprise sales cycle is it takes a little while to get people on it, proving it out as deal cycles unfold.
Yeah. Well, at least you've got some baseline so far. So are you still in beta or is it out?
Yep. We're in beta. We're hoping to do a more kind of public full launch late summer.
Okay. So I've had a lot of founders and new platforms on the show, and I'm always intrigued on how you go to market, right? How do you price this thing? How do you get that first demo client? Do you, do you have them agree to pay something early on or agree to pay if certain criteria are met, right? How do you move somebody? Because you get a lot of techie geeks, right? People like bleeding edge technologies and they'll jump on something just because they're geeks. But it's like, yeah, some feedback is great, but I want feedback so I can sell this damn thing, So how do you bridge that gap and get good beta clients that will also pay?
Yeah, good question. So the way that we are going about it, different people have different opinions. I'll just talk to you about how we're approaching it, right or wrong, is first having people look through the product and see the amount of effort or work that it will take on their part so that they can say, okay, yes, I'm in or out. If they're in, we're not making them pay for the beta. Instead, what we want is a commitment to provide feedback, to join sessions with our design team. So they are giving their time to help make a better product, number one. Number two, at the end of the beta, if they met certain, call it milestones in using the product, then they're able to, quote, name their price. If they want to continue post beta and they were actually committed and participated, they can have their pick. Because for us, those first users are far and away far more valuable than the dollars that they generate in revenue. I mean, they are the closest line to making the best product and to figuring out how to then go to the broader market. And they're sharing with other sales teams. It's the number one way we found beta users is word of mouth. So that's how I approach and look at beta customers. Again, different people, different products, different industries, maybe more or less right or wrong for them, but that's our route.
How do you choose those initial ones? Is it, the dream 100 sort of idea, find, the best ones, reach out, and if so, are they kind of cautious? Like, oh, is this a trap? You want to give us free software, or is this kind of a common practice? And it's an easy sell.
Yeah. So what we found is that because nobody else is talking about this specific problem in the sales tech landscape, we're finding a ton of just inbound interest saying, hey, I don't have anything for this. I'm really curious. Is there some way that I can get on the product? And we look at beta users in two different groups. One, there's the group that very clearly falls into a perfect use case customer profile. For example, you're selling enterprise and you're selling HR tech. A lot of HR teams can't make a buying decision on their own. They have to go to a bunch of different teams to get buy-in. It's a perfect use case that we found. So it's like, right, come on in. The second case, whenever you're building a new product, bringing something to market that didn't exist, you're always trying to figure out the bounds of who this is and is not for. Yep. So for example, I am trying to figure out, and I don't have an answer to this yet, but I'm trying to figure out how low we can go in terms of sales cycle, deal size. So this works great if you're selling over a 8-month sales cycle on a 6-figure deal. Can it also help you if you are selling a, call it $4,000 a year product in a 30-day sales cycle? I don't know. So we're having some beta users who fit that characteristic or that profile, if you will, join the beta to help us figure that out. So we're intentionally trying to pick people who might not perform well in the beta, if that makes sense, because it's going to be very instructive for us long-term.
Yeah. Kind of the control group, I guess.
Yeah. Control group, or I wouldn't say we're expecting them to fail, but we're expecting them to not like certain pieces of how the product works, or to be more there to be more friction in their user experience. And we're trying to figure out exactly when that happens, what people are doing in the product as a result. And that's the best way to build the product, is you got to find the fringe cases and the bounds of when you are and are not helpful.
Yeah. That's cool. You gotta have the boundaries, right? You gotta know, you gotta be able to say definitively who you can help. Mm-hmm. And then those that are outside of that scope, that realm, then they can decide if they want to dip their toe in the water or not. So why not though just a Google Doc? Is it just better organization, just more structured? Is that what this is bringing to the table?
Well, it's super manual and time consuming. So most sales reps point blank won't do it, and they won't use it. There are sales reps who will, but those are the higher performing, more invested reps who will take the time to do it. So that's number one. Number two, Google Docs, they can't tell you certain things like, hey, this content relates to a closed won deal in these industries more often than when this language is present. It's a closed loss deal, right? So there's just a whole upper limit of possibility that you can't build around when it comes to a Google Doc. And then third, it's very difficult to integrate Google Docs with a CRM. And the sales tech stack is just getting gnarly. There are so many different tools that are growing. And if things aren't working together, talking to each other and integrating, especially when you think about a team of, call it 100 reps, right? Yeah. It's very hard to integrate a new kind of piece or element of the workflow and make that manageable for everybody. So you have to design around all of the other tools that are already in place.
Yeah. I mean, my call just before this was dealing with another platform that, in a way, it competes with HubSpot, but it does complement it for certain users, for those doing a lot of outbound calls. Yeah. And so they're needing some help, to someone that can customize the tool for their customers to make it work more seamlessly with HubSpot, because time is of the essence. And like you said, organization, just because something is free doesn't mean it doesn't cost you something.
Oh yeah.
That's right. I did an analysis years ago on HubSpot versus Infusionsoft, just on load times. Right. And I just literally put the two up together and was timing it, just screen sharing, click to load of contacts. Boom. Click on both. Let's go to the automations. Infusionsoft, it's the campaign builder. HubSpot's workflows or automations, and I mean, significant, like seconds in load time per click. Right? You're like, oh, no big deal. You have 10 people that spend 8 hours a day on a CRM, and it takes an extra 3 to 7 seconds to load a screen. Now you start adding that up. Right. Well, it's phenomenal, the impact.
That's right. It stacks up. And what I found at a prior organization, so we used Marketo, and it was kind of the same type thing with load screens. And what I would notice is that people would open up, click on one thing, then move to a totally separate new tab. They would start working on something else. Then they would come back to that Marketo tab after it had loaded. And so cost is also like the switching costs. They would get into a brand new mental gear and try to do something else because they didn't want to wait for that page to load. Yep. And I mean, that's enormously disruptive.
Oh yeah. And it happens all the time. It happened to me today, right? Just on something different. But I was like, I was clicking over, I think, the Twitter to look somebody up and got distracted. Right? I go down this rabbit hole and I go back, like, where was I? I had to go back to my other screen and go, oh yeah, I was doing this. It reminded me. And then I went back, so that bouncing back and forth, like they say, that we don't truly multitask. We just are trying to rapidly switch between tasks.
That's right. We're pinballing around all day long.
Super inefficient. So cool. So you've got a history of developing things, founding things, right? Is it, what the heck, man? Nobody wants to keep you around after you invent it. What's going on? Are you just unemployable?
Well, I was, so I stuck in the nonprofit tech space for about 8 years. So I love that. I even went as deep as fun fact, I'm a CFRE, certified fundraising executive. It's kind of like the CPA of the fundraising world. So, I stuck around and I went pretty deep there. And then, to be honest, coming out of that experience, so the company that bought my prior startup built the enterprise team there. And so I was on that journey for about 4 years, just under 4 years. And I didn't really know what it was I wanted to do next. So I landed at this place called GAN, Global Accelerator Network, where we'd help build startup accelerators all around the world. Mm-hmm. And I always knew that I wanted to get back to the early days of building something, but I didn't know what the problem was that I really wanted to go deep on. So it's kind of like this big startup playground for 2 years where I ran growth, just meeting founders all day long, talking with people who just were doing their life's work and loving it. And, just kind of waiting to figure out what that opportunity would be before I made the jump. And lo and behold, it was Fluint. And here I am.
Yeah. So who was the first person you hired?
So the very first person, his name was Neil, and he was helping with UX. I mean, very early days. You got to figure out like, what the heck are we going to build? And so pretty much everything that you see on Fluint when you're in there was a product of listening into countless user interviews as I was kind of trying to go deep and understand how people were going about this today. So that he's a lot of fun to work with.
And was that just your own money, just taking a risk, or were you already floating the idea to raise some capital?
So alongside GAN, the company that we spun Fluint out of, and the manual kind of Google Doc testing phase I was doing with our own sales team inside. So closing real deals, real revenue off of Google Docs to try to prove out this concept before then putting some capital up to say, okay, let's actually invest in designing and then developing a product.
So were you able to leverage GAN's money to do that? Or is that what they do, is kind of seed new ideas?
Yep. So first capital into the company to get us rolling with development.
Nice. Because I'm always interested, like how you decide, to bootstrap something versus outside money.
It's honestly a decision that we're still weighing, because you don't always have to bootstrap. You don't always have to go venture. Where we're kind of landing right now is we are leaning more toward venture for the next phase of growth. And the reason is that sales tech is just such a crowded space. And what venture affords you to do is move quickly, because it's no secret engineering time is expensive. So if you want to continue developing the product with a certain level of speed, you need cash and capital up front, which obviously that's what the venture route is best for. So that seems to be the direction that we're going right now, but to be announced when we complete a formal raise.
Yeah. So it's Fluint with an I, right? Fluint, fluint.io.
That's right.
So you're still in beta. So should companies of any size go give it a try, or should we recommend like a more narrow focus of who should visit and request access?
Good question. So if you're interested in joining the beta, it really comes down to the size of the companies and deals that you are selling to, as opposed to your own company.
Okay.
So if you're working with a longer sales cycle, complex with a lot of different contexts involved, then we're a good fit for you. If you are more of a transactional focused on SMB, not the best fit. We have let in, as I mentioned earlier, a handful of people to try to test kind of the bounds. But the perfect fit where we're seeing a lot of good traction is more of the enterprise sales process, large deals, lots of context, all involved in your sales cycle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Very nice. Launching in the spring. So any day now, huh?
That's right.
Are you nervous?
Yeah. I mean, it's mostly just you spend so much time wanting to do right by customers. I mean, we've had so many incredible people help us with the product design that I just want to make them proud. All the users that, helped create this, because how Fluint looks today is very different from the picture that I had in my head 9 months ago.
Yeah.
And that's how I know we're doing it right. We're building it for other people. So I just want to do them proud.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, now all the world is going to be watching you because they're going to hear you on the sales podcast. All right. So it's like being on Oprah times 10.
It's like Oprah meets Good Morning America
meets Joe Rogan.
There you go. That's right.
I do jujitsu. I just don't smoke pot, but hey, I'm not bagging. Just not my thing.
Hey, to each their own.
I can't do anything anymore. You get older, like, I sip a little bit of bourbon, like, oh, I'm tired, I need a nap. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it, man.
Just don't combine the saber on the back wall with your bourbon episodes.
Dude, my aim gets better. It steadies my hand when I sip a little bit. Hey, Bubba, hold my beer.
Well, if nothing else, it probably makes you a little bolder. Throw the watermelon up. Let me hit it in the air and see what I can do.
Oh, I didn't see all those people. I'm sorry. Just, I don't know. Put some mud on it. Put some duct tape on it. That'll be all right.
That's right.
Very cool. All right, Nate. Well, thanks,
Wes.
Nate, the founder of Fluint.io, Fluint. Thanks for coming on the show, man, and good luck with the launch.
Thanks so much for having me, Wes. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
All right.
Without a champion, the deal is dead. Amen. I hope you got something out of that. In any deal that you're working on, when you're working on a complex sale, right? More than one buyer, takes more than one meeting. Somebody has to carry that banner for you, right? Who is your internal champion, your cheerleader fighting for you? How do you empower those people? How do you educate them to make sure you're not doing the telephone game, right? You're giving them some pointers and they're getting the facts wrong. It'll sabotage you. So it's important. But that's why you need to go far and wide. You need to go wide and deep. All right. Everybody's, call to the C-level. Okay, that's great. You can't always get there. You need multiple points of entry. You need multiple champions and cheerleaders. So what are you doing to get there? How are you cultivating those relationships? What questions are you asking? Because we as salespeople have to adjust how we sell to match how our prospects want to buy. And you can have different personality types at every entity. And they give off clues if you know what to look for. I cover those in the Sell More of Everything program. I'm always breaking down interviews with guests. They send me their books. They send me access to their programs. I get access to tens of thousands of dollars of tools and books and training. And I consolidate that and mix it in with my 25 years of sales experience. And, going back to 1988, really, when I entered the Air Force Academy, the leadership training I began getting back then. Heck, I've got my 30-year reunion coming up. So 34 years of military service, training, leadership, sales training. Come on, come hang out with me. All right. Sellmoreofeverything.com. Invest in yourself. It's so affordable. It's embarrassing for a year. So jump in, invest in yourself before inflation makes me raise the prices. It'll still be a good investment in yourself, but you can save some money for crypto or buying me some more bourbon, buying me some jiu-jitsu gear. All right. So just do that. Sellmoreofeverything.com. Thanks for listening. I'll go sell something.